Hey guys, welcome back. In the last few videos we created the Stickies application interface, the HTML and CSS, and then in the last video we created the actual note object. Alright, so we did quite a bit of code. We also connected to our database note test, and then we created our set and get methods, alright, to set certain properties and methods of our object. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is continuing to work in the prototype. Alright, so basically we're extending the note object to include all these methods. The next thing we want to do is add a close method. Alright, so this particular method is going to run when you close out the sticky note. Alright, so basically we're going to say close, which is going to be ran as a function, and we'll pass in an event. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say this dot cancel pending save. And we're going to create this cancel pending save function in a minute. Basically it resets a 200 millisecond timer on the save action. Alright, and it's actually run every time a key is pressed. So whenever you press a key, the text is getting saved into the database. Alright, so next we want to what do we want to do next? We want to create a variable called note, which is going to represent the object. So note equals this. Alright, now what we want to do is run a database transaction. Alright, so we want to take the database variable and we're going to say dot transaction. Okay, we went over this in the first section of this chapter. This is going to take a function. Okay, and we're going to pass to this function a tx variable, transaction, and we can now use that to run the execute SQL method. Alright, so we can say tx dot execute SQL. Actually, only the S should be capitalized. Alright, now what we want to run here is we want to delete the sticky based on its ID. Alright, so we'll say delete from, and if you're familiar with SQL, then this should be fine for you. The table is going to be called my stickies. Okay, so delete from my stickies where ID equals question mark. Now the question mark, we're going to pass in a value for that, and that's in the next parameter is going to be the ID. So it's going to be note.id. Okay, so this question mark is replaced by this, and then of course we want to remove the note from the interface. So down here we're going to say document dot body dot remove child this dot note. Alright, so the next function we're going to create is called save soon, and basically what this is going to do is it's going to call the save function to save the actual note in the database if the user hasn't pressed a key within the last 200 milliseconds or whatever we specify. Alright, so this will be a function alright, so save soon, we're gonna again call this cancel pending save, and create a variable self which will represent the object, and then we're going to say this dot save timer equals set timeout. Okay, so if you've worked with JavaScript for a while, then you know what save timeout is. Basically, it's going to run something as frequent as we specify. In this case, it'll be we'll run the save method every 200 milliseconds. Okay, so set timeout, which is going to be a function, and say self.save. Okay, so that's going to call the save method. Function. Okay, so the next parameter after the function is going to be the time in milliseconds, which is going to be 200. Alright, this should have a comma. So that's the save soon method. Now we'll create the cancel pending save. So here we'll delete the save timer. Okay, so I'm going to say if not save timer, and in this, okay, then we're going to return, and then we're going to say clear timeout, and we're going to pass in the save timer, this dot save timer, and then we'll delete this dot save timer. Alright, so we're just going to clear out the save timer. Alright, so next is going to be the save function. Alright, again, we're going to call this cancel pending save. And let's see. We're going to check for a property named dirty, alright, in the object, and if there is, then we're going to update the timestamp first. So we'll say if dirty in this, and that's what this does. We've seen it a few times. We've seen it here as well. We're just checking to see if this property is in the object. Alright, so if it's in our code here, if it's set. Alright, so if dirty in this, and then we're just going to say this dot timestamp is going to be equal to new date dot get time, which will give it the current time, and it'll be updated. And then we want to delete the dirty property. So this dot dirty. Alright, and then underneath here, create a local variable called note, equal it to this, which is just the object as a whole. And then we're going to call the transaction to update the note and the timestamp. So db dot transaction, okay, and the transaction function, okay, we're going to pass in tx. Alright, so the transaction will be tx dot execute SQL, and our query, which will be update my stickies, which will be the table name, and we're going to set note and the timestamp. Remember, we passed the actual values in after to replace the question marks. Okay, note timestamp left top. Okay, so the left and top positions, and z-index. Alright, so these are basically the fields we're going to have. And you want to make sure we have a quote. We want this wrapped in quotes. So the fields are note, which will be the text, timestamp, left, top, and z-index. Alright, so we want to add to this. Alright, so we're going to update these fields where we're going to say where the ID equals a question mark for a placer, and then we're going to do a comma, and we're going to set the values down here. Okay, so the values will be wrapped in brackets, and the first one is the note or the text, and then we're going to have the timestamp, then the left, note.left. You want to make sure that these values are in the order that's here. Okay. Okay, note left, and whoops, I put a dot there. We don't want that. Yeah, I'll put a space here to make it more readable. Okay, so we get the left, and then we have note.top. Okay, and then note.z-index, and the ID, note.id. Alright, so that looks good. That's our save function. We want to make sure that we want to add our commas after each method. And when I say method or function, they're the same thing. It's just that in object-oriented programming, a function is usually called a method, so I use them interchangeable. So sorry if that is confusing. Alright, so that save function or method basically, if you already had a note and you wanted to update it, that's basically what it does. We're going to add another function to actually insert a new note or create a new note. Alright, and that's going to be called save as new. So I'm going to say save as new. Save as new. So we're going to set the timestamp to the current time. So this dot timestamp is equal to new date dot get time. Alright, and we're going to create that note variable. Variable note is going to be equal to this, and then we're going to run our transaction. Okay, so I'm going to say db dot transaction, put our function. Okay, function should take tx as a parameter, and then we can use that tx to execute SQL.